Je pense sans cesse à toi.
Hi there, and welcome to The Foretop. It's a roundtable discussion of today's hot-button topics in food and beverage. I'm your host, Catherine Cole. How have grocery stores changed, and what will they look like in the future? Will cured meat and raw milk really kill you? And have celebrity chefs grown more serious? We will ponder these questions ahead in episode 20. And be sure to listen all the way through, because at the end of the show, I'm going to announce a contest that you can participate in. Here in the studios of OPB, I am joined by Michael Ruhlman, the author of something like, is it 25 books?
I believe so.
Including The New Grocery, The Buying and Selling of Food in America. And Camas Davis, a former food writer and editor who is the founder of the Portland Meat Collective and has a new book coming out sometime soon. When will that be out?
Whenever I finish it.
Well, welcome. And Heather Arndt Anderson, a regular panelist with The Foretop, who is a food historian, botanist, and author.
Hi. Hello there, Catherine.
Now for our first course. Over the past century, the ways in which we have shopped for food have changed dramatically. Where consumers gave a list to a store clerk who would gather items on the shopper's behalf back in the day, today we have Costco, Amazon Prime Pantry, or Prime Now, or Prime Fresh. I'm not really sure which is which anymore. Michael Ruhlman, you have a brand new book out called Grocery. I'm curious to hear from you. How have grocery stores changed over the past century, and how do you foresee them changing over the next century?
They began, of course, as trading posts, and then they moved into general stores. And for most of their history, they had very few items. Up through the 1920s, they would have 200 to 300 products in their store. We now have 40,000 products in a typical grocery store.
Wow.
The biggest change over this whole time is that, especially in our lifetime particularly, is that food retail is just fragmented. It used to be, I don't know, I mean, I'm 53, and I remember a time when you could go to a drugstore, but you couldn't find eggs or milk at a drugstore. Now you can find eggs and milk and all kinds of food at a drugstore. We have Walmarts. We have food in department stores. Target used to be a department store. Now it is food. So the biggest change is this fragmentation of the food retail space, and it's only increasing with the new online retail, with the big box stores, Costco and Sam's Club and that kind of thing. So it's the choices of what we can buy to eat have never been vaster, and never have there been more places to buy food at.
Michael, every time I go to a Walgreens and see wine, it's really depressing. Can you explain to me why? I mean, it's a little bit of why this fragmentation is happening. Why are drugstores carrying food and wine?
They saw an opportunity to make money. I don't know how or why, but because the margins are so slim. Grocery stores work on a 1.25% margin, like basically a 1% margin. So if they make $100 in sales, they get a dollar of profit, which is crazy from a business standpoint. So I don't know why these big box stores, why Target started selling groceries, other than they saw that they could. It really happened when Walmart got into the grocery store business. In 1988, Walmart started selling groceries and was overnight the biggest grocer in the world. Once Walmart did it, then everybody started selling all kinds of food.
Before that, in the, I think, 1930s, Portland, Oregon-based grocery store Fred Meyer, which is now owned by Kroger, actually spearheaded the movement of the one-stop shopping concept. Fred G. Meyer wanted people to be able to take care of all of their errands in one place, and he also still had his eye on the type of service that earlier grocers were offering, with the tying up your purchases in a package with paper and a bow and bringing it out to your car. So he kind of married the best of both of those worlds by offering a clothing department inside a grocery store, having a place to buy your vitamins and your medicine inside the same store where you're doing your grocery shopping.
Heather, excuse me, he sold clothes at this place?
Yeah. He had clothing departments. He just, whenever he heard from a customer that they wished that they could get something, he would add it to their inventory. And he even would pay the parking tickets of customers who had gotten ticketed for parking illegally while they had to run in. So he
that
realized
needs to come back. I want that coming back.
He realized that the problem was that these people were coming in from the opposite end of town to do their shopping, and there was no place to park. And so he ended up opening a store with car side service in a neighborhood where a lot of the people had been living. So he really cared about customer service.
Wow, I had no idea. Camas, I'm curious, your perspective, would you call yourself an artisanal butcher?
No.
No? Okay.
I know how to butcher, but I don't butcher for a living.
Okay, well,
we teach butchery.
You teach butchery.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, how has the sale of meat changed over recent years, and how do you see it changing in the future?
I have actually noticed at Fred Meyer a shift towards a kind of simulation of the old school butcher. So for a long time we had, and we still have, meat in styrofoam packages. We have the long case of meat. But recently and maybe a small, if anything, little meat counter that was almost just representative and not ever used by the customers. But I've seen at a couple of Fred Meyers and as well as other grocery chains this sort of movement. Maybe it's a nostalgic movement, I don't know, but movement back towards having meat in the case that you ask the butcher to cut for you. Maybe not cut for you, but wrap for you. Although I've stood and watched for a while what happens at those meat counters, and it does still seem like customers are still picking the styrofoam packages over the actual quote unquote real meat in the case at grocery stores like that. So I don't know how much of it is a performance versus real, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's interesting. I always just assume it's fresher if it's in the case, but you don't think that's
I think it's more expensive if it's in the case.
Right, because there's more waste. I mean, there's the possibility of more waste, probably. Yeah.
I'm curious about the quality of meat. Mm-hmm. How do you see the quality of meat? How has quality of meat changed?
Well, I think that's what's interesting about a place like Fred Meyer opening up a butcher shop like Meat Counter. It looks like we automatically think it's better meat for some reason, but it's the same meat that's in the styrofoam package. It's still factory farmed meat. It's still industrialized meat. So there's this sort of gap between a nostalgic sense of what good meat is and what it actually is.
There's less packaging to throw away, though, and you don't get that gross bloody maxi pad that sits in the bottom of the styrofoam container, Yeah. It's so foul. I don't know why they still think that's a good idea. But I think that the reason people do opt for the styrofoam package is because people really like the grab-and-go sense of control they have over the speed with which they can conduct their business. And that was the impetus behind the shift toward self-serve grocery stores, was people didn't want to necessarily wait around and make grocery shopping their big social event for the day. They wanted to just get on with their lives. And
Well, and meat is, I think most Americans are scared of meat for the most part. So to go up to a counter and ask for a cut and maybe not know what it is scary to a lot of Americans. Whereas if you can go and anonymously grab a package of whatever, you don't have to be so embarrassed about not knowing how to talk to the butcher or not knowing what to do with it.
Really? You think people feel judged?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the students who come to our classes feel that way. Yeah.
I wonder if that's why those types of packages usually contain only ground beef or a very ordinary cut of steak that's not going to challenge the shopper to think outside the box culinarily. You don't have to talk to anybody about how to prepare it. You can just get your choice of 2 or 3 different things.
Yeah, I think we're pretty – I mean, Michael, I'm sure you have opinions about this, but I think we're pretty limited in our understanding of what to do with the whole animal and how to cook something that isn't cooked quickly like a pork chop or isn't turned into a burger like ground meat. So a lot of those other cuts you never see in grocery stores.
Michael, this is really interesting to me because we all have been hearing lately how every move of ours is now tracked in a grocery store, whether it's our phones or I don't even know. I've heard some grocery stores, the moment you take something off the shelf, it's somehow tracked by some digital system, which I can't begin to explain. So it's so interesting that on the one hand, grocery stores are getting more and more high tech. There's now self-checkout. There's now this Amazon store where you don't even have to go through checkout. It just knows what you're getting, and when you walk out, you automatically get charged. And then on the other hand, we have this whole theater of nostalgia that Camas is talking about with this sort of putting on a show with the meat counter and making people feel like it's 100 years ago. So what's going on here?
You make two really good points. One is the increasing technology that the stores are using to make it more convenient, to make all marketers know that convenience sells, fast sells, people want to get in and out. So that's why they do that. But there also is a nostalgic component to our food shopping. We want to believe that there's somebody who cares about our food and is giving us our food, is looking after the food that they're selling us. I don't think either of them are particularly effective, either model. It's all a matter of merchandising. It's all merchandising. And they're just trying to sell food. And I think the grocery stores aren't that high tech because they don't have time right now. It's the newer stores and the stores trying to break into the market, like the Amazon store, which is fascinating, and we'll see what happens there, that are creating the innovations that may last if they save us time.
My husband used to manage the team of software developers who created Walmart's app for the mobile devices. Wow. And they were the number 2 app in the App Store, 1 or 2, like behind Facebook. It was those for the top. And it's because you could do all of your shopping with your phone. You get into the store. It has your route through the store mapped for you on your phone, and it tells you how much it's going to cost. So you can avoid the embarrassment of not having enough money or just kind of knowing what you're in for. And yeah, it was always really surprising to me that a store that has a reputation for catering to a certain demographic of people has been employing the most state-of-the-art technology to simplify the shopping experience for people.
And it is interesting that this technology is coming to the brick-and-mortar store. So what do people think about online shopping? I feel like I've dabbled with it over the years, and then I end up just going back to going to the grocery store. How about all of you?
I don't think I've ever done online shopping
I
before.
love online shopping. Do you guys remember Cosmo.com back in like the olden times of the 1990s?
No.
Yeah. Well, you could order a couple of groceries. You could get like a frozen pizza. You could get a pack of smokes and like some condoms delivered to you on Christmas Day. And I was like, man, this is the best, the year 2000. I just felt like I was living in the future, and it just was so great. And of course, they had no minimum order. You could literally just order a bag of M&Ms, and so they completely went bankrupt very quickly. But Instacarts and other, these upcoming grocery shopping apps and websites are great for like new moms. If it weren't for Amazon Mom, which is a free Prime account for new moms, I probably would have put my head in the oven because I would have diapers just show up on a regularly scheduled basis. Other, kid items that are not food related. But yeah, then just foodstuffs would just show up. I could order a case of cereal, get the case discount, and not have to leave my house for a week if I didn't want to. The Instacart, I think that sometimes the flaw is that if you want a specific thing, their shoppers will make an on-the-ground substitution if needed, and sometimes you don't get exactly what you want. Like one time I ordered some chicken backs for making stock, and they brought me a bag of chicken feet, which is not really the same thing.
But amazing that you can actually get chicken feet through a grocery
if you need chicken
service.
feet. Yeah. And then hard to find exotic items. Like I ordered some gardenia fruit called chija for making my own danmuji. Like I pickle my own daikon because I think it tastes better. You can't find that ingredient anywhere. And so I love that I can just order from Amazon. And I did try looking at the local Korean groceries. And I love living in the future. It's great.
Michael, what's your take on online grocery shopping?
I've tried to do it, but I don't get what I want, and it's been sort of frustrating. Also, the heavier stuff you get charged a heavier delivery fee. I mean, I'd like to buy a lot of fluids for some reason, and they're really heavy. And so I'm not living in New York, and I'd rather not carry them through the street. But it hadn't been productive, so I've gone back to my old way of just going to the grocery store when I needed, LaCroix or a steak or oatmeal or whatever. But I do think that more and more people will do online shopping. That whole, and this does relate to grocery stores, that whole center of the grocery store called the grocery department, all the stuff that doesn't go bad, whether it's food, and you should be wary of food that does not go bad, to, paper towels and sparkling water and sodas and cereals. Those will increasingly be bought online. All that commodity stuff that is exactly the same no matter where it comes from. That's going to go away in the grocery store. We're all going to be buying that online. It's going to be delivered to us, that I believe.
So, Michael, do you think that will further change how we cook or if we cook, or do you think that change has already happened and this is just an extension of how we already shopped?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change our cooking or our eating at all. I think it's going to just change what's in our basket and what these stores are. I think grocery stores are going to become the good ones are going to become what they used to be, which is actually specialty stores. They specialize. They got good meat in, and they got good produce in, and they got good groceries in.
Yeah, when you said that about people just buying, perishable goods in these specialty stores, I just had this vision of, anytime you travel in Europe and you've got your fruit and vegetable stand and your butcher, and I mean that sounds lovely. It kind of sounds
for people who like to cook, it's great, and you have better food that way, and you're healthier that way, and it's more fun to eat that way. But we have to recognize in America that we need to, if you want the benefit of delicious, inexpensive food that you cook yourself, you have to put some time into it, and you have to work. Somebody has to shop.
I think that the delivered groceries really does harken back, though, to the olden days again, where you would phone in. I mean, if you were of a certain means, you would phone in your grocery order and it would be delivered to you, or you would send your house servant to go pick it up.
If you were so lucky.
Yeah. So if you had a phone, you were already lucky. So it's interesting to see how the same sort of model of service is being employed in a completely different way to a different end.
I think maybe we should move on to our second course now. Maybe we could have a little bit of salumi for our second course, accompanied by some raw goat's milk cheese, or maybe not, because according to the World Health Organization, processed meat, which includes traditional cured meats, is a carcinogen. And according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, raw milk can make you very sick or kill you. What gives? Camas Davis. It's kind of an open secret that foodies consume a lot of cured meat and a lot of raw milk products. So I'm curious what your opinion is as a professional in the meat industry on the health warnings that are accompanying these two controversial forms of protein. Do gourmands have death wishes?
Rolling my eyes.
Yeah, Camas, what gives?
Well,
you're voicing
Michael,
all these cancer-causing products.
I'm a terrible person.
You are.
Poisoning everyone. Well, first of all, I just like to say I am someone who believes we should eat less meat, but I don't like this study. I'm also someone who thinks that we should think for ourselves, and I don't like the study because it keeps us from thinking for ourselves about things like moderation and things like how is the meat produced that is turned into processed meat, and where does it come from, and how does that affect our health?
So, Camas, just to be clear, you don't like the study, but are you skeptical of the study?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I would say I'm maybe more skeptical of how it's been read by the media. I mean, if you really read the study, you realize it's not a study about risk per se, actual risk per se. It's more about a categorization of processed meat that is that basically states it could be carcinogenic or it is to a certain extent, but it doesn't incorporate how much you would have to eat for how long, what else you may or may not be doing in your life that would make that more carcinogenic or less carcinogenic. So to me, it's sort of, it's a review of what we already kind of knew, which is that almost everything we eat and breathe is possibly carcinogenic.
Well, there's a famous study about a lettuce and the hazards of lettuce. They studied people who only ate raw lettuce for several months, and they were malnourished and sick, and the women became infertile.
Right.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Surprise.
So watch out for that.
Yeah.
Watch out for that
Sunshine,
lettuce.
too. Sunshine is apparently...
Watch that lettuce. That's right.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Air.
another study or a famous example of how spin is everything, where Edward Bernays, an ad man back in the day.
An ad man named Bernays. Nice.
I like that ad man.
He was a nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he had been asked by the Beechnut Company to find a way to make the public start buying bacon, because this was at a time when everyone was just having a piece of toast and orange juice for breakfast. And he got doctors to agree that, yes, compared to a piece of toast and orange juice, bacon and eggs is a healthy breakfast. And so he was able to put in writing, 99 doctors or 99% of doctors agree that bacon and eggs is a healthy breakfast. And and the sales soared, and it's all because of how you pick out the one little sentence that is technically true and make that the sensational headline.
Right.
That's not true. Bacon and eggs?
Yeah.
Bacon and eggs are not healthy, nor is kale healthy. Our food isn't healthy.
Nutritious.
Correct. Nutritious.
Yes.
It's a nutritious
Good point.
breakfast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nutritious breakfast.
Yeah. Good
Yeah, what
clarification.
is healthy?
We are healthy.
Yes.
Our food is nutritious. We are healthy if we eat nutritious
Right.
food.
Yes. The thing that I think is interesting, too, about this discussion of processed meat, I mean, when you talk about processed meat, we're talking about cured meat. We're talking about preparations of meat that have existed for thousands of years. And in fact, when you salt meat and you hang it to dry, it concentrates in flavor and in texture such that you don't actually eat very much of it. You don't need to eat very much of it. And so, yes, we eat a lot of hot dogs and a lot of bologna and a lot of bacon, but the original purpose of quote-unquote processing meat or curing meat was to actually make it last, to make it
Safer.
a special thing that we would eat every once in a while that we didn't eat a lot of. And so
Also, so we didn't waste it. So we had food throughout the winter.
Right.
It was for sustaining ourselves. It wasn't just for the deliciousness alone.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I like this historical perspective because we didn't used to have refrigeration, obviously. And the same thing goes for milk. We're being told, we've been told for years that raw milk will kill us. But, until pasteurization was invented, there wasn't such a thing as pasteurized milk. And I don't know how many people died. Although, Heather, you were telling me before that we walked into the studio that milk used to be extremely dangerous.
Yeah. Portland, Oregon was the nation's leader in infant deaths related to gastrointestinal illness because of bad milk. The milk was not clean. We didn't have ordinances in place to regulate the cleanliness of milk, and people were dying left and right. Esther Pohl Lovejoy, who is a medical doctor here in Portland, her son died, and she and her sister became very, very ill from drinking bad milk.
What years are about
1909. So this was 20, 30 years after pasteurization had been invented. It wasn't necessarily being widely employed.
But before widespread refrigeration was available.
Right.
So it was not kept. It was kept at room temperature.
Well, we still had ice boxes. I mean, people had figured out that ice keeps things cold. And also you had milk delivered to you daily. It wasn't that you bought a gallon and kept it around.
Right.
People drank it at every meal. So fresh milk was coming through on a more regular basis. But yes, there are dangers besides just the poop and hair and bugs that can end up in the milk bucket. Not that pasteurization makes all of that moot, but at least it attempts to sanitize. And I don't have like a dog in this fight about raw milk, but I was also reading that the nutritional content of milk that has been pasteurized changes very negligibly. So the amount, actually the vitamin A, which is the most important nutrient to milk, is increased through pasteurization. But the vitamin D and C is decreased by only a few percent.
How do you know that? Why should we believe you about that?
I read
I read it on the internet.
Busted. Shut up, Michael.
No, I don't disbelieve you. I don't know that. I'm skeptical. I get on my high horse about what you should do and how you should eat, but I also say you shouldn't listen to me. You shouldn't listen to anybody. You should listen to yourself and think for yourself, as
Right.
Camas, you were saying earlier.
I think that people fear science, and I think that the kind of people who really want to drink raw milk there tends to be, in the Venn diagram of humanity, there tends to be a strong overlap between people who distrust science and Western medicine, and I will leave it at that. But raw milk cheese is delicious, and I didn't eat it when I was pregnant because I was afraid of getting sick.
Yeah,
I did.
Camas, you're expecting a baby soon, so can you tell? So you are eating raw milk cheeses.
Should I say that in public? I feel
Child
like this is
abuser.
gonna be a protest.
It's not against the law.
No, I mean it's I've spent a lot of my meat career, I guess, if you will, trying to think more subtly about where meat comes from and how there's not just one kind of meat. And I feel the same way about dairy product and the same way about fish. I mean, that's sort of what's lacking in our debate, all these impassioned debates about food, which is that it's either totally bad or it's good, but that's because we're not thinking about it. I mean, there's, Jonathan Safran Foer in the book Eating Animals said something that I quote often, which is, in America, in the debate about eating meat, one either never eats it or they eat it and never think about it. And I just think it's dangerous to have only those two choices when it comes to what we eat. So for me, I make well-informed, I do my research, I read on the internet and decide what's real and what's not, and do my research and figure out what is the actual risk. And again, that goes back to that WHO study. They're not talking about actual risk. They're talking about a categorization of an ingredient that is on equal par with plutonium and tobacco and alcohol. And I think we're all smart enough to know that those affect us differently. So again, subtlety, nuance. I wish we had more time for that, in our lives.
Yeah. I think I was reading that tobacco causes 81% of all lung cancers, and the thing I was looking at, I think it said processed meats cause 21% of all bowel cancers or something. But I thought 81 versus 21 and lung cancer, I think, is a lot more prevalent. I just thought, why are they releasing this statement without sort of clarifying exactly what the risk is?
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't ever. I mean, a lot of these studies don't get at what are our general lifestyles that go along with that? What are we
Right.
What are we eating with our processed meat? What kind of bun is it? What kind? None of that gets tossed around very, very well, anyways, in the discussions that come after those studies coming out.
It's
So-
impossible to control for all the
can't.
I
variables.
was going to say the same
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, the
Yeah.
French fries will kill you faster than the hot dog will, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Don't eat an entire package of hot dogs and smoke, 4 packs a day. You'll probably be fine.
Oh, Catherine, you take away all our fun.
Well, let's move on to our fun third topic, which is celebrity chef culture and celebrity chef TV. We thought chef culture was going to hell in a handbasket, but there's a new countercurrent of thoughtful, long-form style food television out there that's turning the spotlight on chefs who are more seasoned and genuine than they are camera-ready and shiny. Heather Arndt Anderson, why don't you start us off by telling us about a few of these shows and what you think is going on in the new celebrity chef movement?
Well, I watched a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of quote-unquote food television, and I'm sad to say that the Food Network...
Why quote-unquote food television?
Well, okay, that's fair. I think that the Food Network and these kind of competition shows...
Are not really food.
No, I don't think so. It's about theatrics and competition and being cutthroat and awful human beings. And the kind of people that they favor, the kind of chefs that they favor, I don't think are really representative of the kind of chefs that I know in real life. And I don't know why America decided that that's what makes good food television. But new shows, and the shows that I've been watching, ironically, do a much play a bigger role in elevating these chefs into this sort of, god-dumb shows like Mind of a Chef and The Chef's Table. Do these kind of deep dives into the daily lives of chefs as they go about, bouncing their child on their knee or going out to the Nordic hinterlands to pick spruce tips, or whatever. But they're done so artistically, and the pace of them is such the antithesis of a show like Top Chef or Iron Chef. They're really just beautiful and poetic and artistic to look at. But yeah, I think that they do kind of end up making people like me much more obsessed about individual chefs instead of chefdom as a type of celebrity.
Michael, you've written 3 books, I believe, that are kind of thoughtful examinations of the lives of chefs. So I'm curious what you think about these new shows.
I don't watch a lot of it because it's so boring to me. I do like Chef's Table, and I love the quality of the filming and the writing, and they're good shows. They're like the one on Dan Barber, just really. I know Dan, and so I know his restaurant, so I really know that show was a great illustration of the chef as a whole, and so I really respect that show. All the other competition shows, they're boring. I don't know why people watch them. I think maybe it's for the subliminal eating. I don't know.
They're rude, too. I mean, the treatment of humans compared to a show like Great British Baking Show, or known as Bake Off in Great Britain, the competition is about how much people can harm each other psychically. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I don't know what's so wrong about us as American viewing public that we think that that's entertainment.
But it is entertainment to so many people.
I know.
mean, whether it's The Bachelor or whether it's, cutting down somebody's food, watching a chef reduced to tears because so-and-so didn't like their broth or whatever. It's all about entertainment. It's all entertainment. That's what TV is.
Well, and I think that the sort of dehumanization that happens to chefs on the competition shows is the opposite of that is happening on these more thoughtful shows. That I think that the chefs are becoming very humanized, and we're seeing a more holistic picture of them, which I really enjoy. And then, as you mentioned, Michael, the shows are cinematographically very beautiful, and they're really a joy to watch.
Although, Heather, you sent us all a link to an article on a Deadspin site. It was written by Drew McGarry, and the article was entitled, actually it was a diatribe, I should say,
It was.
Down with Chef Worship. And this writer was really tearing apart these shows that you're saying are really lovely. So what's your take on that?
I think that he raises a good point that, and it was when I was trying to sort of get at that these deep digs into chefs' lives does sort of elevate them as these types of rock stars that we're supposed to somehow be convinced that they are worth our adoration. But I think he's wrong. I think that David Chang is, I don't know him personally, but I feel like he is my best friend because of shows like Mind of a Chef. And I have a gigantic crush on him. And it's, the same kind of feelings that I had toward rock stars in my teen years. I'm like, wow, like everything he does is amazing. I've never had his food. I don't care. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't spend $200 on a ticket to eat at, an event that he was cooking at necessarily, because I think it does get a little out of hand. But
what's your take, Camas?
I guess because I spend a lot of my day thinking about how do you get people to care about food or to cook, I always wonder, what of the array of food programming that we have helps that or hurts that. And, does Rachel Ray help people cook more than a show about David Chang? Probably not. I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe she does because it's because there's not a foggy background and Chang walk. I don't know. I haven't seen the Chang episode, but he probably wouldn't walk in the foggy background. That'd be more like maybe Dan Barber or something. But when you turn chefdom or cooking into a kind of art through film, are you alienating the home cook? Are you making them more interested? Are you? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But
I think that a question like that, Camas, might make the assumption that the home cook is a layperson, and that the home cook doesn't know anything unless the Rachel Rays or the Sandra Dees of the world, Sandra Lee, whatever her name is, the one who's like, open a can of frosting, there, you cooked. Those kinds of television shows don't help home cooks like me. I don't know why there has to be you either know nothing or you're a professional chef. And I think that there's a very wide chasm of home cooks who have a little bit of skill and who have been enjoying it for a long enough time that they've learned a few things. So I would really like to see more of that. But I know I am just one person.
I'm thinking about when you were saying that chefs are like rock stars now. I guess there are shows that's, behind the scenes in the rock star's life or, the making of the film kind of thing. And I've never – I guess this is sort of explaining to me why I don't have any interest in food TV. I've never had interest in any of these kinds of programs. I'd rather just sort of appreciate the finished product.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it is kind of like the VH1 behind the music for cooking or for chefs, not for cooking necessarily. But yeah, and if you just want to listen to the album and don't really care about the person's struggles.
I really don't.
That's
Although,
fair.
It's interesting. I am interested in book form, hearing about, reading about their struggles, but for some reason the screen just doesn't do it for me. Michael, how I'm trying to formulate this question properly, but I'm just wondering how much of the kind of inside life, the psychic struggles, the real struggles of chefs that you've observed, have you seen that properly demonstrated on screen, or
no?
No, is
not.
it all kind of a fake, beautified version of their lives?
Chef's Table tries to get at it, and they do to some extent, but these other shows, competition shows, certainly don't. And it's very hard because the life of a chef, the difficulties and struggles are so internal, and they're so specific to a certain workspace, depending on where your restaurant is. And the work is so much harder than people realize, and that so much harder than a film can convey, a television show can convey. You can't convey how hot it really is in a kitchen. When I worked in a kitchen, I had my thermometer out on my station. I worked a grill station at a French restaurant in Cleveland. And my thermometer, I pick it up in the middle of service, it read 150 degrees. That's well done. So these chefs are just cooking themselves. I mean, it was hot. People would walk back and say, God, it's really hot in here. And, it's just chefs – for a chef, that's normal. So it's hard to convey through images and TV that this is just normal working conditions for a chef. That's just a small example of the fact that the work of being a chef is completely different from any other job there is. And it's very hard to let people know what it takes to be a successful chef, what it means to work clean, what it means to work efficiently, what it means to be aware, to know where everybody is in a kitchen, to know what is going on in the kitchen, to know where everybody's going to be in 3 seconds or 30 seconds or 60 seconds, and when to pick up an 8-top, and that the whole dance of a kitchen. Very hard to convey this unusual, intense, fascinating world.
And we hear that there's a lot of substance abuse and depression in the cooking industry, and you can
a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of depression. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting how many of my chef friends here in town and elsewhere have started blaming their lack of good line cooks on food television and on these shows that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I mean, mostly, I don't know if it's true, but mostly what they're saying is all these kids are coming in from culinary school or they haven't gone to culinary school who just want to be the guy that someone wants to do a movie about, who has the story and has the look and has the glory and the ego, and don't really realize at the end of the day it's 150 degrees. And you have to work for 12 hours or more.
And they don't realize how hard the work is and how little money you get for it. There's a shortage of good cooks out there. Mm-hmm. All the restaurant chefs that I talk to say it's terrible. And I think people getting into it, and this could be right, get into it because it looks so cool on TV, and you don't see how hard it actually is. Right. So I can see that they're right to some degree. Mm-hmm.
There's no one doing your hair and makeup.
Right.
At most restaurants, there's not.
Well, and it's
Rocco
also
DeSpirito used to travel around with his own
he
hair
did
and
have
makeup.
his own makeup guy.
He
I remember
did.
seeing him on the street in New York, walking down the street, being followed by his makeup guy.
Really?
Not for a
Yeah.
show, just his makeup
Just
guy was just
because.
there with a little brush.
Poor Rocco.
Poor Rocco.
My mom used to come home from her shifts. She was a line cook, just completely haggard, and like her shirt and houndstooth just destroyed, and just stinking of grease and sweat, and she hated it. She did it because she had to feed her kids, not because she thought she was going to become famous. I mean, this is the 1980s, so it wasn't like we had a few celebrity chefs on TV, but she had no delusions about what cooking was going to get her in life, except for off food stamps, like that was basically, and that used to be until I think food television really took off with these competition shows. I think that was the life of a chef, was that you had a very shitty job to do, and it was grueling, and
nobody really cared about it,
no
or
one
you,
cared at
or
all.
what you did.
Mm-mm.
Well, okay, let's wrap this up with just a thumbs up or thumbs down. Should people check out The Mind of a Chef and Chef's Table?
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are good shows.
Okay.
Everything else can die in a car fire.
Well, on that note, let's have some dessert, where we each go around and talk about something foodie or beveragey we've been enjoying this week. I usually share something really deep and intellectual, but I'm going to go with mindless drivel this week. I realized something about myself. I know I said I don't watch food TV, but getting back to your earlier point, Heather, about chefs being our rock stars today, I was researching something for work and I was on dailymail.com, which we all know is full of clickbait. And, it's all down the side and it's all the Kardashians and whatever. And I realized after the fact that the only clickbait I clicked on was about Tony Bourdain's love life. He's now with Asia Argento. They're a very cute couple. I don't know the backstory. I don't know these people, but I did find that interesting that at this stage in my life, I'm not clicking on the drummer from the band. I'm not clicking on the young hunk who's in the romantic movie. I'm like, oh, who's Tony Bourdain dating? So,
He's totally head over heels in love, it seems like.
oh,
That's
really?
great.
Totally in love.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, he's delightful. He's like a new guy. He's like all flowers and light.
That's wonderful. Good, you get him. Go
Flowers
get
and
him,
light
Tony.
I like it.
Well, the photo was adorable, and I wish them the best. Camas, how about you? Do you have something deeper for dessert this week?
Oh, I don't know. Well, because I'm pregnant, I have these food obsessions that occur like 5 times a day. And my latest obsession, which has lasted about 5 weeks, is triple cream bacon and avocado sandwiches.
Yes.
Triple cream bacon. What is that?
And avocado. No, triple cream cheese.
Triple
bacon.
cream cheese, bacon.
Ooh, but triple cream bacon, that would be
That sounded interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really good idea.
I highly recommend it. It's delicious. But other than I'll do a real dessert. That was just fake dessert. I recently had the chance to write a little blurb for Jeffrey Roberts' new book. I think it's called Salted and Cured. It's sort of a cultural history of curing quote unquote processed meats in America.
Which will not kill you.
Which may or may not kill you, depending on how much you eat. But it's interesting because he really approaches the people who have continued to make their country hams or their Italian salamis American style in America as kind of almost like a defiant step against the industrialization of meat. That in order to keep that flavor and that process alive, they actually have to work with farmers that raise their pigs differently, that have better flavor. And so it's sort of like a rebellious, almost revolutionary book with cured meat at its center. I highly recommend it.
Michael, how about you?
Can it be food?
Sure.
Because I've been thinking a lot about breakfast because I'm writing about grocery stores and how awful the cereal aisle is, and so it's gotten me thinking about what's good breakfast. And I think that our American breakfasts are filled mainly with nutritionally bankrupt foods. They're all based on refined grains and flour, basically, and corn. So I have fallen in love with the savory breakfast with one steel-cut oats that are not even cooked, that are just soaked overnight with some lemon juice, just a little bit of lemon juice, and with some Greek yogurt and some nuts if you have it. And if you like a little sugar, sugar is fine in this form because you're eating all this fiber with the oats. Broth for breakfast, noodle soups for breakfast, lentils for breakfast, beans for breakfast. And that satisfies and lasts for so much longer than even a pancake breakfast.
Yeah.
So it's those savory, fibrous, legumy, brothy, high protein breakfasts that I think we need to return to.
That
Amen.
sounds good. Yeah. And I love your point about steel-cut oats because a lot of people think they can open a package of instant oats and get their fiber for the day, but that is not true.
No, anything instant, something's been done to it to make it less good for you. But these you just pour a cup of these oats into a larger cup and fill it up with water, and in the morning they're ready to eat. They're chewy and delicious.
Excellent.
I agree with everything Michael just said. My dessert piece is not very hard-hitting, though I do want to let you guys know, I have your charcuterie book, Michael, and I've made the corned beef into a very delicious sandwich. And I have a copa that I made from some Tails and Trotters, a copa ham, hanging in my basement right now inside a fishnet stocking because I did not have a ham net.
That works. It's perfect.
Yeah, but the thing that I've been really interested in lately, we're coming into the growing season in Portland, Oregon, and right now, rhubarb is just making its way out of season, but I've been really interested in making and canning marmalades from non-citrus fruits and looking at historic recipes for carrot marmalade. And so I made a big batch of rhubarb and purple carrot marmalade based on a 100-year-old recipe. I added the rhubarb on my own, and the ginger and cardamom, of course, would never have been in an original old recipe, but it's delightful. And I want people to think about vegetables as sweet comfits and little delicious things that you can have on a nutritionally devoid English muffin for the breakfast.
Or a slice of copa with some lentils.
Right. Yeah, you can have it on that. But it's just so good and tart and earthy, and you don't even need to add pectin because the rhubarb is so nice and pectin-y.
I wonder how that would be on Camas's sandwich.
Well, I like sweet and savory together. I know people poo-poo it, but I think that pineapple and ham go well together on a pizza. And I will arm wrestle anyone who tries to say otherwise.
Well, thank you, and thank you to all you panelists. Thank you, Heather Arndt Anderson, for bringing your food history perspective to today's episode. Thank you, Camas, for bringing your knowledge of butchery and meat to this episode. And thank you, Michael, for not only telling us about your new book, Grocery, but also the making of a chef, the soul of a chef, and the reach of a chef. If anyone's interested in shows like The Chef's Table or Chef's Table, they should definitely check out those books. Okay, listeners, I have a little contest for you. Here is the lowdown. If you and a friend both subscribe to The Foretop and rate it in iTunes, I will send you a free signed copy of my new book, Rosé All Day. Simply take a screenshot of your iTunes rating and your friend's iTunes rating, post them on our Facebook page, facebook.com/theforetop, or tweet them to us at #4top, all one word. It sounds complicated, but it's super simple, and I promise you will love this book. Today's IACP and James Beard Award-winning show was recorded in the high-fiber, protein-packed city of Portland, Oregon, in the studios of OPB. You can read all about us on the OPB website. Our producer is Alex Ward. Special thanks to the OPB sound supervisor, Stephen Cray, and our theme music was performed by the incomparable wine importer, Kermit Lynch. I hope you can join us for our next episode, and please tell your friends about the Foretop. Au revoir.
Nuit blanche, nuit blanche, nuit blanche.
So are we supposed to tip here?